people too much. And I think when I put lover of life there, they realize that they're going to meet someone that's enthusiastic and maybe is hopefully a joy to talk to. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I think I will.
Yeah, I think it will be very interesting discussion today. So, Stefan, what we want to learn today is, of course, so how did you end up here in Lithuania? But before that, can you tell a little bit more about your research, what you do, and what you do at Life Sciences Center?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so I work with Crispr Nucleases, which many of you are probably aware is one of the leading gene editing tools that are available. And my work focuses on their ability to determine a correct target for gene editing from all the other sequences in the genome that they shouldn't be interacting with. Because if we want to be able to use these for therapeutics or diagnostics or perhaps agriculture, we need to make sure that they're very focused, that they're precise. And so I design technologies that allow us to understand sort of the very small little pieces that go into separating the correct sequence in the DNA from any incorrect sequence in the DNA, so we can make sure we only make our gene edits at those individual spots. I think in a perfect world, we would only want to make one edit and one edit only, but this is something that we're still aspiring to. We're trying to get there. We have these problems, we call them off targets, and so if we can do our best work to try and reduce off targets, or at least be able to predict when they will happen, and to make sure that when we make edits with CRISPR nucleases or other tools, that we make the edits we intend, then we'll have tools that are safer and more useful to us. So that's what I have been working on for the last few years when I was in Texas. And at the Life Sciences Center, I'm pursuing this work both with the gene editing tools that we already have available and with some of the ones that are just now being discovered or engineered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I heard the news that you are coming to Lithuania, and the topic was that, the Stefan, he's working with off-target, he's like off-target expert,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, oh my God, this is related to CRISPR. That's so important. That's so good that we
Yeah.
will have a person who, is the expert in the field here.
Absolutely, so that actually points out one of the things that really attracted me here to the Life Sciences Center is the Partnership Institute. So from what I understand, one of the goals was to make sure that we have experts here that are all sort of on the different sides of gene editing technologies, so that we can make sure whatever the problems are, we have people here that have the skills and the expertise and the experience to approach those problems and also work with others for those problems that are actually covering maybe many different sides of gene editing. So that was sort of one of the features that I really liked. And another thing that was sort of attractive is these would also be other group leaders that are just starting their independent careers as well. And so like many of us, when you're starting on a new adventure or a new part of your life, you're looking for those people that will be your teammates, that will be your colleagues, that you all can work with one another, support one another. And so it was sort of a unique experience in that way. A lot of times when a university or an institute is making a hire, they might only hire, one or two new investigators. In this case, it was 6. So that was something that was really unique.
That was really unique for Lithuania.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been sort of interesting because, of course, there's all these scientific aspects that we share, but it turns out there's many non-scientific things too. Like telling someone, oh, this is how I went through the migration process, or oh, this is where I, pick up these certain items that I need for the home, or I like this store for this reason. So some of this, just being a human being, all these things we share with one another too. Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, but how did you actually start working with CRISPR? Because CRISPR now it's like, the top technology.
Yeah.
Everyone is talking about CRISPR and so on. So how did you get to CRISPR?
Well, so I'll be honest with you. Initially, I was a little afraid of CRISPR. I remember when I was in graduate school, and CRISPR was just sort of coming on the scene, and I didn't quite understand it, and it was sort of outside of my field, and so I was a little uncomfortable with it. At that time, I was investigating fungal pathogens, so yeasts and whatever that might infect us, and so CRISPR was sort of a different world. But then when I went to the University of Texas, I was attracted to Ilya Finkelstein's lab there because his lab was sort of merging biology and also engineering and technology development. That's why I went there. So I was initially working on cellular aging on a project where we were designing these sort of microfluidic, these really tiny tools that would allow us to capture cells and monitor them over their whole lifespan. And so I was doing some engineering, some biology, and like I mentioned, I like to do mechanics and work on things, so this was very attractive for me. These skills that I had used outside of the laboratory, I was able to start bringing them into the laboratory. And so we had this other project that was going on in the laboratory that involved CRISPR nucleases. And the idea there was, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to understand this targeting, how the CRISPR nuclease finds the right DNA to edit. And the idea was, well, what if we were to look at all the different DNA sequences all at once? How could we do this? How could we engineer a tool that allows us to do this? And so the idea was, well, let's take a different technology, in this case, a technology that's called next generation sequencing, and adapt that for a different purpose. And so with next generation sequencing, you're determining the sequence of millions of different pieces of DNA all at the same time. And so this technology is performed on small microscope slides, or actually sometimes they're quite large, but anyway, we had to take those and figure out how we could look at how proteins would interact with the DNAs on these slides. And so there was some mechanics that were involved, mechanical engineering, maybe not mechanics like working on my motorcycle, but mechanics involved. There was some, of course, biochemistry involved. There was a lot of computation that was involved, and this was getting me excited because in some ways it reminds me of playing music. You're getting all these different people with different skill sets together to work on this one problem. And so, of course, at the time, what's the most interesting protein DNA interaction you can think of? And of course, it's CRISPR nucleases. So finally I said, okay, I have to figure out what these things are doing. And so then I, realized just how programmable and useful they are. And then I get really excited about them. I'm one of those people that can get excited about almost any scientific topic. But, sometimes I need like a gateway, right? So something to get my mind focusing there. And then, then it really explodes from there. But anyway, this is what happens. So we're working on this project, and I'm working with all these different people that are all experts in their different fields, and it's CRISPR nucleases. So at that point in time, we were developing a technology for understanding how the protein binds the DNA. And so we did really well with that. We were able to file a patent with it. We, this really great publication. We said, okay, well, this is only half the battle, because for a nuclease to do its job, it doesn't just have to, find the DNA, it also has to cut it. And so that's when I started working on, okay, well, how does, just because the protein, or in this case, the CRISPR nuclease makes it to the DNA, there's still some other decisions to be made. And maybe those are also depend on if it's the correct DNA sequence, the correct target, or the incorrect one. And so then, I started exploring this. And once again, working with people with different skill sets and bringing everything together. I think I answered your question somewhere in there.
Well, you said you were avoiding CRISPR and that you finally end up being CRISPR expert, really well known. And I think that was a great decision in your life.
I think it's working out okay.
Yeah. So you now work in this field, and we all know how well CRISPR is perceived all around us, and that's a lot of investment in the field and a lot of applications and so on. So how do you see, well, the future of CRISPR, and with your research, what you want to achieve, like.
Yeah. So before I answer the question, you reminded me of one small thing I want to mention. One of the things I love about working in the gene editing field is that there are many people just in the public, in the community that are aware of gene editing now, that are aware of CRISPR. And it's something that's really exciting as a scientist. When someone asks you what you do, first you say you're a scientist and they say, oftentimes it's like, oh, I didn't really know a scientist. And then you say that, you work on CRISPR and they're like, oh, actually I heard of that on a podcast. It's amazing, right? So now we have this connection. I can explain more to them, and so that's been really rewarding being in the field. But sort of altogether, the field has a lot of different problems that we're working on. So I work on one of them, and how I view it is I work on safety. Right? I want to make sure that the tools that we have are the safest and most effective tools possible. I want to make sure that if you have a variety of different, say, CRISPR nucleases available, that you can select the right one for your particular goal, whether it's fixing a disease in humans or maybe engineering crops so that it can be, better withstand harsh environments or something like this. I want to make sure you have the right tool. And I want to make sure it does the thing that you expect it to do, and hopefully nothing else, or at least very little else. But this is only one of the problems in the field, right? So one of the other issues is, we'll say that you want to work on a disease that affects the liver, right? Well, part of the way to make this technology safer is to say, okay, let's only go to the part of the body that is affected. And we'll only do our gene editing there and leave everything else alone to try and keep everything as safe as possible. Well, this is actually also a huge challenge right now for gene editing, this sort of delivery problem. Yes. How do we get the tools that we have available to the places that we need them? Let's see, and then there are other sort of issues that come along with this, but these are not all separate issues. Like, for example, this delivery thing, this ends up connecting to the problem that I work on because, if you bring the tool to the cell that needs to be fixed and you let it stay there too long, it's kind of like if you start getting, what do they say? You start getting curious. You're like, oh, well, what else will I do while I'm here? What is the phrase? Idle hands are the devil's playground, right? But anyway, something like this is true. And so if you deliver your tool there, but it stays too long, then this is where you can have more of these off targets happening. So there's a variety of different challenges that are in the field right now, and we really need to work together to solve them because they're related to each other. And not only these scientific problems, but there's also sort of larger societal problems that are related to them. When is the right time to use these tools or not use them? This is equally important, and also making sure that people understand what's available and how we can use it in the right ways, and also how to avoid the wrong way. And the only way you can do that is through communication, talking with people, sharing with people. So I like to do those things too.
Yeah, that's why you're here. That's why we are doing this interview, because we need to talk about that.
Absolutely.
And well, I think in general in Lithuania, this knowledge about gene editing is quite widespread.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe people don't recall CRISPR so well, but we have this gene scissors, this term. It's like, so are you actually using the scissors? Are you the ones who are working with the scissors?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, we are like doing actual scissors.
We're the scissor makers, we're the scissor users, we're the scissor engineers.
Yeah, so in general, public is familiar with that, and I think that's great.
Yeah, that was also another thing that attracted me here. So, the United States has a lot of great qualities, but one thing I think has become clear in the last few years is appreciation for science was sort of on a downhill trajectory. And one of the things I was excited about with Lithuania is it seems that, biotechnology in general is something that the country is passionate about. And so it's great to be in a place where other people feel that same energy. So yeah, a unique quality of Lithuania that I appreciated and
Yeah.
still do.
Well, we sometimes get this question. So, are you working with something in biotech in Lithuania because it's maybe such a new thing for you? I'm saying, look,
Yeah.
we are working in the biotech field for 50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the top level people were working here.
Absolutely. And, I didn't even mention that. Of course, I talked about my new colleagues,
Yeah.
but also my existing colleagues are really amazing. So, like getting into the CRISPR field, of course, some of the biggest names were from here in Lithuania. Now my office is just 2 doors down from Professor Virginia Shikshnys, we have dinner together sometimes. And so it's also amazing for me to be able to work with some of the, sort of the OGs in the field, right? The original people. And, in his case, these are people that have been working for decades in the field and are still on the leading edge. So this is something that you would expect, perhaps in the United States, but this is something I think exceptional here too, that really attracted me.
Well, I will tell you the secret. You are super lucky to have dinner with Professor Shikshnys. He has a very limited time. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is what happens to all of us just as time goes on, somehow the vacuum gets filled.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else attracted you here to Lithuania? Because I know that you were considering Canada or Europe. So tell me, who we beat? Who were our competitors?
So there are a few locations in the United States. There is a location in Denmark, and so the issue is, let me just tell you, for anyone that's not aware, seeking academic professorships and group leader positions and everything, not everyone's all in coordination with one another, right? So, I had a few of these applications that I put in that after I'd already made my decision to come here, then they're like, oh, hey, we'd love to interview you now. And I say, well, you're at least a month or maybe 2 or 3 months too late. And so, it was only a month ago, I just got an email from one of these other places. And, but anyway, to get back to it, so why did I choose here? So there was, for us, my wife and I, my wife Eva, her and I are adventurers, right? We seek out new experiences. We realize, even outside of work, there's these different parts that make life worth living. And you can sort of transport yourself back in time to, we'll say, fall of 2020. And if you'll remember, in the United States, there was a presidential election that was happening at that time. And we had some concerns about how that presidential election might turn out. And so it started us thinking more about living abroad, living, in a different culture. And especially for us, we had certain features of our own morality that we thought might be better reflected sometimes in a European community. I think one of the obvious ones is healthcare, right? So being at a place where healthcare is recognized as a human right was something that was actually important to us. It aligned with our personal values. And so, being a place like here was attractive for this reason. And so this sort of got the ball rolling. Let's start looking at these international locations. And then when I saw the advertisement, particularly for Lithuania, it was those things that I mentioned already. So, of course, the long history that Lithuania has in biotechnology, the opportunity to be starting a new institute within the Life Sciences Center. I love working on new projects. And so for some people, they might rather be in an established location. But for me, being in a new institute means that we can make we can attempt to make some really smart decisions right from the beginning about how we want to organize ourselves, how we want our community to feel making sure that we're being inclusive, that we're working with one another, trading ideas, things like this. And that was going to be unique about being here. Also, I'll give you a short story. Of course, no matter what, when you have a partner, it's important to have them interested in coming to a location as well, right? And so my wife and I were looking through, I don't know, I think there's probably something like 80 or 90 different possible locations. And one of our friends asks her when we're out to dinner, okay, pretend your husband isn't here. If it was just you, out of the, in this particular month, I was interviewing at like 5 different locations. And she said, and he said to her, which of these 5 would you choose? And the only international one at this time was Lithuania. And I thought this would be very low on her list. It turns out it was her top choice because it gave her, her a chance to live a different life, have a different experience, see new things. And from what we had been learning about Lithuania, it was something that was an interesting place for her. So she's, we'll say, a bit of a naturalist, right? So, now we live not too far from here, right at the edge of the forest. And so every day when we're walking our dog, she walks through the trees, when the weather's a little bit warmer, we might see the birds or the butterflies or whatever else, and, maybe the mushrooms popping up. And so this was something that was very attractive to her. And her family is originally from this area, just over the border into Poland. But it was, her great-grandmother had emigrated to the United States at the beginning of the 20th century. So it had been a long time. And so she also saw this potentially as a way to sort of connect back with some of her history. And so, right now she's been writing a blog about our move here. It's Into the Forests I Go.
Okay.
.com. Anyway, but it's just documenting our experience moving here and trying different things and how it compares with the life, our experiences in most recently in Texas and other places that we've lived in the United States. So that was one of the other important things, making sure that the whole team is interested in the outcome, right? And in this case, the whole team is me, Eva, and our dog, Audrey Sparkles. And I will tell you, Audrey has also been loving it here. So
I believe it. I mean, the forests here are just perfect for the dogs.
Yes. And, she's a greyhound, one of these racing dogs. Very skinny. She has we got her a new jacket that was has been her new best friend in the winter, but she loves the snow. She'll just go running through it, kicking it up, and she has this, very long sight that she can have through the forest, because here we notice that there's not a lot of sort of bushes, like sort of trees that are this tall. So you can actually see through the forests, and for her, she can just shoot through there and loop around. And anyway, I think I got far away from the question that you asked.
Well, the most important thing that now we know who we should thank for you coming here.
Absolutely.
So that's great. I mean, now we know, as a country, from marketing perspective, what we have to tell about ourselves, a lot of nature, a lot of everything. Well, and actually, I don't know if your dog loves the water, but like 15 minutes with a car and we have lakes here. So it's even
I love the water. One thing that made me really excited is when we're investigating the Vilnius area and we see the lakes out by Trakai. So I've been sailing boats since I was a child. And so I saw, the boats out there on the lake, in the videos, and I was like, okay, I have a place to go sailing. Everything's okay.
Yeah, so, it seems that Lithuania ticks a lot of your like lifestyle boxes that helps you enjoy the life.
Totally. And I think, for us, so what would happen is, these different opportunities would come up. And then we would start investigating the different states or countries or whatever, And so one night you're getting excited about one place, and the next night you're getting excited about the other place. But the key thing is making sure that those assets that the country has, that they're easy to find and for people to know about them. I don't know.
Okay, and from the research perspective, how do you find doing research here? I mean, maybe, I mean, you have been in many different institutions,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe there is something that we could even improve as
Yeah,
a country.
so let me tell you the things that I like, and then the
Mhm.
things that I think we can
Yeah.
work on together.
Okay.
So the things that I really like about being here is people have been very willing to sit down and talk about science and sort of brew some new ideas. And in general, people are very enthusiastic about these different projects. There's good infrastructure at the
Mhm.
Life Sciences Center, so many of the tools that I would need were already available there. Um, One of the things that's a little bit different than the United States, a part of the United States that I would like to import here,
Yeah.
is the ease in getting the things that I need, right? So in the United States, if I needed something, I would, talk to the manufacturer and, a few emails later, talk to the purchasing department, and it would be in my lab the next week. Here it takes a little bit longer.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and from what I've learned is, of course, Lithuania has a different history than the United States has. And from what I've learned is like part of this is to make sure that things are being done in a way that is equitable and honest. And I
Yes.
think those are both great goals. And now if we can only make sure equitable, honest, and fast, right?
Yes.
Because of course, science, we want to get science done quickly because it has so much benefit to society. And so if we take those same processes and we stretch them out too long, we lose those benefits.
Yes.
And I imagine it's a very complicated problem. But I think it's one hopefully we can improve. I want to mention one other thing that I realized attracted me to Lithuania and to the sort of European style of doing research, and that is collaboration. So here, people are very much interested in collaborating, whether it's down the hall or, to colleagues in another country. And I love team-based approaches, so this was very attractive for me. It was another way that being here would sort of align more with my personal values. I would much rather make a teammate or a friend than an enemy. So I think that's how people generally do things here, at least from what I've seen so far.
Yeah. That's great advice about being less bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And I really hope that, let's say, Minister of Economy and Innovations and maybe Minister of Science and Education are listening. Maybe not now, maybe will be listening to this later. So please be less bureaucratic with the researchers if we want to have more of them from all around the world here in Lithuania. So I hope this
Yeah.
word will spread.
That is the
through-
greatest contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like I said, I think the goals are admirable, but I think maybe we can find some new solutions. That would be amazing. And, I should mention my most recent mentor when I was at Texas, he said to me, no matter where you go, there will be some difficulties when you first start. It always happens. He's like, but it will be a different one each time. He's like, I can't tell you what will be the sort of the challenge, but there will be a challenge. And in this case, it's one that, it's solvable. So yeah, I agree with you. Whoever these people are in the different ministries, I hope they're listening. And also, I hope that from my experiences, I might be able to provide some unique perspectives. So maybe I can share some of those if or when the time comes on some other strategies that could work.
Yeah, we will definitely involve you one or another way more actively. Okay, so apart from the professional life, I really want to cover your other part of the life, because as I was reading and as you said, the lover of life and the musician.
Yes.
So you are not only doing things in a lab, but also doing things with some musical instruments. And I know that you had a band.
Yeah.
So how did you leave it behind
Oh,
you?
yeah, I know that was difficult. So when I guess it was almost for 5 years, I was playing with a band in Texas. The band's name is Bone Pilots, and you can find them on Spotify or YouTube or something like this. And in that band, I was playing electric cello. So, I was living in Austin, Texas, and I don't know if the rest of the world knows this, but Austin, Texas considers itself the live music capital of the world. And if you were a bar in Austin and you don't have a live band, people just walk by, right? So this is like required. So there's always plenty of bars to play at and different opportunities there. So I'm still playing music. I'm actually looking for musicians right now to play with. Like I said, in that last band I was playing cello, but I also, my first love for instrument was bass, whether it's bass guitar or stand-up bass. But I also play guitar and I sing, and my wife plays piano, and she's a beautiful singer, and so we have lots of music in our home. But I love being on sort of a musical team, being in a band, working, passing ideas back and forth. And honestly, music was where I learned that strategy is how I can succeed, right? So some people, they can stay sort of in their tower by themselves and think of amazing ideas. I can't do that. I need the interaction. I learned that with music, and then I brought it to science. And it's worked out so far.
Well, we definitely need some kind of a CRISPR band
I
here
know,
in
right?
Lithuania. I will give you some contacts to the
Yeah,
musicians.
if you know some other musicians, I would love to play with people. I think things are starting to get a little more normal at work now, so I have a little extra time that I can sort of start putting towards that hobby. It's a very fulfilling hobby. And honestly, like, one of the things that's difficult about being a scientist is that there can be a lot of failure involved, right? When you're asking the right questions, yes and no are both viable options. And sometimes you maybe were sort of secretly hoping for yes, and the answer is no, and you have to try again, right? With something like music, I know at the end I will have a song, that I enjoy playing. We don't always get that with science, but I can get it there. Same thing, with one of my other hobbies. I like to do mechanics, right? So, one of the things that we brought here with us was my motorcycle, because last winter I had finished, taking it completely apart and rebuilding the whole thing, and so I had just finished this big, sort of weekend project, and I said, after all that work, I can't just leave it behind. I can't just sell it to somebody. I need to bring it with me. So when the weather gets nicer, you'll probably see me out and about on my motorcycle too.
And what kind of motorcycle it is?
So it's a Moto Guzzi. It's from Italy.
Okay.
Bit unusual in the United States, but I was surprised I really haven't seen too many of them in Lithuania either. I think maybe if I traveled a little more south, probably the closer I get to Italy, maybe I would see them more frequently.
Yeah, well, we have the saying that, here in Lithuania, we have a saying that when do you know that the spring is coming? Is when you are, let's say, driving your car and you start hearing that, noise, which means that those fast motorcycles are just coming and will pass you. So that means it's spring.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been driving motorcycles for about 25 years, so I'm already past that stage, let's say.
Okay.
Now I love to enjoy the ride, and I don't have to be the loud one or the fast one to do that.
Yeah, so you are good with yourself and just enjoying the moment.
Yes.
Well, I think I have to introduce my son to you, because he's always saying like, oh, mommy, I want to be a scientist, but I also want to be a musician, and that's not possible. And I'm saying that's possible.
Absolutely.
And he says, I don't know anybody who is doing that.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I can show the great example.
So before I decided to be a scientist, that was the other direction I was thinking about going, was into music composition. At the time I was in high school, I was playing in an orchestra, and I was also playing in a jazz band, and then outside of school I had my rock band, so like all these things going on, and so this was and still is a very important part of my life. But I realized it wasn't the only part of my life, and it turns out you can do more than one thing and enjoy all of them. You need to find the part of it that's most enjoyable to you. So for me with music, the writing process is my favorite part. And so, I don't have to be Taylor Swift to enjoy writing, right?
Yes.
I can be here writing music with my friends or bandmates or whatever and get all that fulfillment and allow that to fill me up so I can handle maybe some of these failures in the lab and still want to go in the next day.
Yeah, so obviously that your alternative career was music.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so
Although I guess I could have done the mechanics as well. And I used to drive the in the United States, we have these yellow school buses
yeah.
for picking up all the students. And when I was working on my bachelor's degree during the summers, I would drive one of those yellow school buses.
That's nice. Okay, so scientist, musician, mechanics.
yeah.
Well, obviously you have many options in life
Yeah,
if you decide that you don't like the one.
I think this one's working for me.
Okay.
Though.
So, what are your future plans? I mean, you are now here in Lithuania. Would you consider to stay here for long, or as an adventurer, you're
Yeah.
already like looking what's out there?
Well, I think one of the things that's great about being in Europe is the new adventure is only hours away rather than having to cross an ocean or something like this. Of course, the United States has many beautiful areas too.
Yes.
But, no matter where you go, almost everyone will be speaking English there. So, now I have the challenge of learning new languages. But to your point about, would we consider staying here in the long term? And the answer is yes. But it also points to a unique quality of the EMBL Partnership Institute. And that is that the institute follows the EMBL model. And so how that differs from, say, the typical way things would be done here in Lithuania is that the positions are from 5 to 9 years. And the idea is that people will often move on to new locations, and then their positions will be replaced with others, so that there's this flow of scientific ideas and expertise, in this case, around Europe. And I think that's something that Lithuania will benefit from. Even just like within this initial group at the Partnership Institute, we have so many different countries represented here. Excuse me. And so along with that comes different ways of thinking and different approaches to problems. So I think it's something that will continue to benefit Lithuania. And yeah, it may mean that it's not an option, right? So ideally, they want you to go somewhere else.
Yes.
But I think that Lithuania is making a very strong case.
Oh yes, I mean,
Yeah.
being able to live like what kilometer and a half, which is a mile away from your office, and everything all around.
Yeah, absolutely. When we first moved here, we were renting a flat near Kalvarijų turgus, which was really great because every morning I would get on the trolley to go to work, and I would see all the different fruits and vegetables that people were bringing from maybe their summer houses or
Yes.
whatever and selling there. And we're close enough to the city core that we were able to walk down there and explore all these places. And then just in November, we moved closer here to the university, which was I think a perfect time to move over here because now we get to sort of enjoy the beauty of the snow rather than just the other side of the snow that makes the driving difficult and the sidewalk slippery. But instead we get to enjoy the silence in the forests and seeing our dog kicking it up all over the place and maybe do a little bit of skiing or something like this. So
That's great.
yeah.
Well, and talking about the future, well, I come from the CRISPR-based business, so I just have to answer this question. Have you ever considered that, you might be, let's say, not a CRISPR researcher, but more like moving to CRISPR side of business?
Let me put it this way. There were some very lucrative offers that were available if I decided to go this direction. And it may be in the future I choose to do that. That may be the new adventure. What I do love is that there are companies like Castheim that are interested in taking this knowledge, these tools that are being developed in the academic laboratories, and actually taking them from there and making them something that people can actually use, whether it's for medicine or diagnostics or whatever else. It's a really critical piece of the sort of the whole puzzle. They all have to come together. You know, as academics, like myself, you know, we're focusing a lot of times on maybe the more risky things. And of course, we have a major role in training the people that will, you know, be employed at a company like Castsign. But then there's all those extra pieces, right? So the part from saying, okay, we have this tool, to can we actually make sure this tool can handle this specific problem? Can it be safe enough? Can it be provided to patients easily, or in a format that actually, you know, makes it to them in time, right? I think of like with the vaccines for COVID. You know, I got my first vaccine because we had this really crazy snowstorm in Texas. Texas doesn't get a lot of snow. And so the whole electricity system went down for large parts of the state. And one of the pharmacies, you know, they have to keep the vaccine in one of these really deep freezers. Well, when they didn't have power, they couldn't keep the vaccines at the proper temperature. So they had to basically give them to everybody that they could so that they wouldn't go to waste. You know, that seems like a trivial problem, but actually it's really important, you know, and it takes a lot of effort to take a tool that maybe works under these circumstances, making sure that it can work under these circumstances.
Well, the most, as you said, well, it's all like a CRISPR puzzle. We are all working together. And for me, the nicest thing that when I got familiar with CRISPR, which was already quite many years ago, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, as a business person, at that time tech transfer person, I now see that, you know, this puzzle was really small compared, and now it's getting bigger and bigger, and that's really nice. You know, being of something that is evolving every single day. That's so amazing. I mean, and that actually makes a positive contribution for the society, makes a change.
I think so. Yeah. You know, I think I will say the one thing that challenges me is how do we implement these tools in the business area while making sure that we aren't limiting access, right? Making sure that people that need these tools for whatever it might be can actually use them, because you know, there's also money to be made by being the only person with, you know, tool X. And so how do we make sure that we sort of find a way to do all the good things and also make money at the same time, so that we can make sure that we can maximize the benefit? And so that's a challenge for the companies, I think.
Yeah, well, that's to some extent a challenge for the whole CRISPR.
Yeah, you're right. It's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah. Okay, so it was extremely interesting to talk to you, and so I was enjoying our discussion so much, but the time seems running so fast. So maybe one last thing that you would like to share with the people who are listening and watching us?
Oh, let's see. One last thing to share. Well, I think the thing that I just want to say is that I want to thank the community here in Lithuania, that you all have been really welcoming to us and have made the transition as easy as you can. You know, I was just even people that are willing to help out. Sometimes we're both my wife and I were trying to learn Lithuanian. It's not very similar to English, so that we have a lot of work to do. And people have been very helpful when we, you know, maybe we're struggling at the store to find something or whatever else. And that has been really nice, really nice. You don't get that everywhere. And I understand that sometimes maybe even people are a little hesitant. But I realized once they realize that we're from America, they're like, oh, they don't have any boundaries anyway. No, we do have boundaries, but we do like to meet new people and talk. And so I think it makes it maybe easy for them to talk with us too. So we love hearing their stories and their experiences. And it seems so far people enjoy hearing ours too. So yes, thank you for being welcoming and sharing your country with me and my family. And
so
my
thank
colleagues.
you. Thank you, Stefan, for joining the Virtual Biotech Cafe and opening the new season.
Yeah.
It was such a great talk to you, and I'm really happy that you agreed to come here and share your story. And I think now, I mean, everybody feels inspired because when we have international researchers here, which was not so very, well,
Common.
often, yeah, for us to have, I mean, everybody feels now that science here in Lithuania, in life sciences sector in particular, is really the top level. And we are working with such a top novel technologies as CRISPR. And we're, well, really enjoying this talk and learned a lot. Yeah, I think now if you will be going with your motorcycles somewhere here in Sunrise Valley, a lot of people will recognize you. So
Good, well then say hello.
yeah. So thank you everybody for watching us or for listening us by whatever means you were doing that. And we will see you in a month at the end of February with a new topic. So keep updated with what we are doing at Lithuanian Biotech Association and follow our virtual biotech events. So thank you. Thank you, Stefan, for being here. And I was Monika Paulė, the CEO of Kazime and board member of Lithuanian Biotech Association, leading this discussion today. Thank you.
Viso gero.
Viso gero.